In the autumn of 1811, Quebec was a city on the edge of war. But inside the walls of the barracks, a different kind of drama was unfolding, one the British Army was determined to keep secret. It was a horrible and unnatural crime that came with a choice: the gallows or the white man's graveyard in the West Indies. Governor General Sir George Prevost had been in Quebec less than a month. The Americans were rattling their sabers, his wife was in the final stages of pregnancy, and the defense of Canada rested on his shoulders. Then a report landed on his desk from the 8th or King's Regiment of Foot. Their commanding officer, Colonel Young, reported a troubling discovery. 2 of his soldiers had been caught together in a compromising position. Not only was this a criminal liaison, it was a capital offense, and one that could bring shame and embarrassment to an old regiment like the King's. Job Abel and Peter McGrady were privates in the elite light company, traditionally composed of the most active and intelligent men in the battalion, and both men had seen action with the regiment during the capture of Martinique in 1809. Abel had joined the regiment in 1805, becoming a light bob 2 years later. McGrady was 20 years old, born in Newry, Ireland. A laborer by trade, he was a stout 5'5" with dark hair, dark eyes, and dark complexion. He added a green light infantry plume to his cap in late 1810. So both men had been serving together in the same company for about a year. But being caught in an unchristian embrace was damning and fatal. First, Prevost needed to answer the question of jurisdiction. Was this a crime for military justice or the civilian court of King's Bench? A copy of Colonel Young's statement was forwarded to both Edward Brenton, Deputy Judge Advocate, and Edward Bowen, Acting Attorney General, to seek their opinion as to whether the situation does not furnish grounds for a criminal prosecution against the 2 men alluded to in His Majesty's Court of King's Bench for the province. Brenton replied, "The facts appear to me of a nature not cognizable before a military tribunal, and that the proper method of procedure is to submit the same to the consideration of His Majesty's Attorney General." Bowen, the Attorney General, was of the opinion that if the facts can be substantiated on oath, there is no room to question their liability to be indicted for the alleged offense. He also makes clear the stakes. If the alleged horrible and unnatural crime not to be named amongst Christians, with which there seems to be no doubt they must stand charged, be proven against them, the punishment of the law is death. Indeed, the very attempt to commit the crime in question is an offense indictable at common law as a very high misdemeanor and punishable accordingly. The stage was set for a civil trial. Orders were sent out indicating Prevost's intention to let the law take its course. Abel and McGrady were to be put into close military confinement and to be kept apart until the necessary dispositions can be taken before a magistrate, when they will be delivered over upon the magistrate's warrant and committed to the common jail of the district to take their trials in the ordinary manner. But a civil trial meant a public airing of the charges, facts, and witness statements. The regiment, and indeed the general staff, were certainly eager to avoid any such embarrassment. Isolated in their cells, with a simple bed and a bucket for ablutions, a sobering choice was presented to each man. Standing trial meant certain death at the gallows, but there was another option that could shield the regiment and themselves from public disgrace. Abel and McGrady could avoid all of that by serving in one of the condemned corps in the West Indies. The West Indies were an unpopular posting that robbed the army of thousands of men a year through disease and death. It was the white man's graveyard. To meet the insatiable demand for men needed to garrison those West Indian islands, several regiments were raised from convicts, deserters, and prisoners of war, the dredges of society. For Abel and McGrady, it was a choice between certain death at the scaffold and the slim possibility of survival in the disease-ridden West Indies. Officially, it was called transportation and commutation of punishment, but their window of escape was nearly closed. The fall fleet had recently arrived at Quebec, and the transport Robert had brought a draft of men and supplies for the regiment. It was soon scheduled to return to England in a fortnight with a number of worn-out soldiers and a certain lieutenant who was said to have gone insane. The decision would have to be made quickly before the fleet set sail, and it did not take long. On November 10th, 3 men were led from the jail cells: Abel, McCready, and a Thomas Walsh, a soldier of the Canadian Fencibles, who was also sentenced to transportation by a general court-martial. The air must have hung heavy with dejection, with the terrible unknowns that awaited them, not knowing if the hangman's noose was not the better choice, compared to a slow, painful death from malaria, yellow fever, or typhoid in the tropics. The winter voyage home on ship was cold, damp, and miserable. And in a twist of fate, once arrived at Portsmouth, the carpenter of the Robert transport was taken by the press gang while on shore getting an injured hand treated. He spent a few days on board a warship before being released. As for Abel and McCready, permanent separation was effected upon landing in England. Abel was enlisted into the Royal York Rangers and McCready into the Royal West India Rangers. Both men had exchanged their scarlet coats for the green coats of the Ranger regiments, but their crime made it impossible to serve together. But the name of the Royal York Rangers was not completely foreign to both men. That corps had formed part of the expedition to take Martinique back in 1809, along with the King's Regiment. And it was to Martinique that Abel would return, not as an invader, but as a prisoner soldier to garrison the island. McCready was assigned to Captain Hubbard's company in the Royal West India Rangers. He too was posted to Martinique, where he had once fought in a red coat before moving to Tobago at the end of 1814. Meanwhile, war raged in North America, but that seemed like a lifetime away. It was Napoleon's grip that pulled them back into battle when he escaped from Elba in 1815. Upon hearing the news of his escape, a part of the Guadeloupe population sided with the Bonapartist cause, and both Abel and McCready's regiments were brought to the islands to quell the disturbance. After some very tough fighting, the island was returned to the Royalist government. Did they catch a glimpse of each other in Guadeloupe? Did they meet? If so, was it a feeling of angst, of sorrow, or anger? Well, soon the invasion force was dispersed back across the West Indies. Abel was moved to Trinidad, where he died in 1817. McCready moved to St. Lucia, then to Antigua, until orders came to disband the regiment. And so McCready boarded yet another transport, and in May 1819 reached Halifax Harbor. Within sight of land, he would languish for nearly a month on board the transport, unable to step foot on shore, no doubt bringing him back to his memories of the lengthy journey from Quebec so many years ago. At length, on June 10th, 1819, he reached St. John, New Brunswick. The men of the Royal West India Rangers were given the choice between a land grant in that province or a £10 cash bonus. Like most typical soldiers, the majority opted for the £10, McCready included. And it's here that Peter McCready disappears into the folds of history. Many of his comrades, the forsaken, the dredges of society, discarded to an almost certain death in the West Indies, crossed into the United States, while some opted to return home to the United Kingdom. Did Peter McCready ever see Ireland again? That's lost to time. Thanks for watching, hit subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.